TikTok, but all of the social media platforms. And just all around very multi-talented. She does the interviewing, she gets interviewed, and yeah, you guys are about to read her incredible book, her incredible work. So
thank you.
Yeah. So I have some questions for you.
Okay, ask away.
If you wanna answer them. So writing a book like this, it's dedication. Takes a long time, yes?
Yes.
Takes a while. When did you actually begin the process of writing this book? Like, when did the idea come to you, like, that you wanted to do this? And did you start writing the stories before you kind of knew what you wanted it to shape out as?
Yeah, so I started writing this book when I was 16. I had just gone through this really difficult breakup, and literally the day of, the first thing I did to kind of help myself heal was turn to writing. So I went to my room, I started writing everything down that I remembered about the relationship and all the lessons that I learned because I didn't want to forget them. Fast forward 2 years, the pandemic hits. And similarly, I was really worried about losing all my memories. So I started writing more of these personal essays down and stories about past relationships and connections that I've had and what I learned from them.
Yeah.
And I submitted these essays to a friend, and I told her I was thinking about sending them into a magazine to publish. And she said to wait up and that she thought this would be so much more meaningful if it was a book. So
shout out to that friend.
Yeah, my friend Stephanie. So it was a labor of love. I mean, I turned all these personal essays, put them together, combined them, and turned it into my real life rom-com. And it became so much greater than what it started off as. This became a greater mission to help teenagers and empower them and show them that they're not alone in their adventures in dating.
I am so glad that you took her advice, and I remember every time I think that ever since we first started hanging out, you've been writing down, like we would go to the bathroom, you're like, wait, I have to write this down. So it's really cool, which leads me to my next question. How is this just 100% factual? Or, you know, were there things that you added in your writing? Because I know you're a very descriptive writer, and you know, you've also written fiction before. So how true are all these stories?
So it's nonfiction. The book is nonfiction, which means it's pretty much factual. It's very, very detailed. A lot of these details are so detailed, it's like hard to make up, and you can kind of tell when you read it. So as you mentioned, I wrote a lot of them down afterwards, like in the moment as it was happening. And I think some of it, I took some creative license. For example, like stories that happened when I was 13. I don't have perfect memory by any means. So I took some creative license for that. But I try to stay as true to the stories as possible.
Okay. Cool. Another question I have for you. How did you come up with all the aliases?
The aliases. So I kind of just like randomized them. I mean, I tried.
Like, hey Siri, give me a name.
Literally. I mean, I think for my best friends, like for my girlfriends, I tried to keep like a first letter just for like a little nod to like my best friends.
Yeah.
But in terms of the guys, like completely different. I changed like hair colors, eye colors, so they're completely unidentifiable. Nationalities, sometimes nationalities.
I knew it. Okay, cool. What's your favorite chapter, or what's your? Never mind, your boyfriend's here. What's your favorite chapter?
My favorite chapter, I have two. I have a favorite chapter that I wrote and a chapter I'm most proud of.
Okay.
My favorite chapter is probably the best friend's ex-boyfriend. Have you gotten to that one yet? You said you're halfway through the book.
I haven't got there yet.
Okay, so I won't spoil too much. But basically, I like had a crush on my best friend's ex, and that got really messy. And what I like about that chapter is it's such a unique story. And also that I don't make myself out to be the hero in that chapter. Like in all of these stories, I'm not like turning guys into villains. Like that wasn't my goal. If I make a mistake in a chapter, like I'm going to be the first to admit it. So I really like how in that chapter, like I admit my mistake. I analyze what happened, where my thinking was flawed, and like what changed after.
And I feel like that's so important to everyone reading it too, because we've all been there. We've all made those mistakes. We've all done things with relationships, both friendship and non-platonic, that we kind of, you know, we weren't the hero of that story. So I love how you kind of add a nod to that as well. I'm sure that's going to make a lot of people feel more heard and relate to that.
And there's something powerful about like an influencer like us speaking out and saying, we're not perfect, we're human, we make mistakes. Like you see people online with millions of followers and you just think they're like bulletproof, like they're so perfect, they don't make any mistakes. And they do. Like there's more to it. There's more to your story than just what you see online.
Yeah, people love to glorify things based off of things that they don't totally know. So
for sure. And on that note, my second favorite chapter is the final chapter, The Journey to Self-Love, where I talk about my anxiety and my OCD journey for the first time publicly. And that was really important to me because there aren't many young adults and teenagers out there talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear people out there advocating for mental health, saying the importance of going to therapy, but there aren't many specific stories being told about your anxiety as a teenager. So I really go into detail about what it's like to have anxiety, my first experiences with anxiety, and how that ties into my self-love journey and furthermore my journey to loving others. Because you hear all the time, you can't love others until you love yourself. And for me, my self-love really started when I hit that rock bottom.
Wow. Well, was that hard for you to write about? Was that a hard decision to make about, really opening up a little bit more? And it's because, this isn't just a rom-com story. It does go a lot further, deeper below the surface than that. So what was that decision like, and how did you kind of, because that's a brave thing to do.
Yeah, it was a difficult decision. I didn't know how I wanted to end my book because each chapter is dedicated to a different guy. Yeah. And I'd been going through this anxiety as I was writing the book. And I was hesitant to write about my anxiety because I didn't understand it. And I knew I wasn't the expert. But I kind of reached a point, it was about 6 months in, where I knew I didn't have to be an expert to write about it. And that's relatable to come out about how you're feeling and say, like, I don't have to be an expert, but this is how I'm feeling in the moment. So I feel like it was important because, your real life rom-com, it isn't like all happiness and rainbows like you see in the movies. My real life rom-com starts from within. It started that day that I experienced anxiety for the first time. And it started when I looked in the mirror and saw myself crying and saw myself, at my lowest point and was able to look at myself and stand in my truth and realize that everything was going to be okay.
Yeah. That's amazing. You talk about this first day that you felt anxiety. Do you remember that day? Like, what was that like for you? How did you realize that, oh, wait, this is something that I struggle with?
So I write about this very specifically in my book, but basically I was sitting on the couch watching a rom-com movie with my mom, and all of a sudden, like, I couldn't catch my breath, and I didn't know why. And I went and I got a COVID test. I thought I was sick. It was the middle of the pandemic. It was negative. And my mom said, you might just be anxious. Wow. I was the class of 2020. I had no prom, no graduation. I was going through a lot. Oof. And I didn't really understand what it meant to be anxious until I started going through it. And it kind of just kept getting worse and worse and worse until I reached a point where it was hard to live with myself and I had to ask for help.
Wow. So are you in therapy now? What's that journey been like for you?
Yeah, I think, yes, I'm in therapy now, and I think it's super important, and it's important to talk about these things, especially like people like us, we have the platform to talk about this.
Yeah.
I think mental health is so like underrepresented in the media. Like no matter how much we think people are talking about it, it's really not talked about enough, I think, especially like in detail.
It doesn't measure up to the other things that are talked about. It's still
exactly, yeah. But I think as for how I'm doing now, I think what changed was I realized like my anxiety wasn't going to go away. Like I wished for so long that my anxiety would go away. I was looking for some light switch I could just turn off, when that's not the case. I think what I really needed to realize was it wasn't going to go away. Nothing was going to change on that front. What does change is the way that you look at your anxiety and the way that you handle it. You learn how to cope, and that comes with therapy, that comes with time, that comes with experience, walking around, doing things you're passionate about while your anxiety is there. Like joy and anxiety can coexist. And I'm learning that. I mean, I'm on my book tour. I'm super anxious. I have this book about like all these past relationships out there, and it makes me anxious.
You have to answer all these questions about it.
Answer all these questions. Like, yeah, I'm freaking anxious, but at the same time, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
And it's okay for those two things to coexist.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that we all have like little quirks and little different things. Like you mentioned OCD as well. And I don't know, I feel like there is some aspect of that that really is a part of your personality, and it's part of what, I'm sure that if you didn't struggle with OCD and anxiety, it might have taken you 5 times longer to write this 300-page novel, because there's not like this driving factor. I feel like sometimes anxious people are the most driven people, just because there's always like a fire under your bouquet.
I always say people who are anxious, the best thing to do is to direct that negative energy into something productive. Yeah. So you see these anxious people, and anxiety isn't necessarily like laying in your bed staring at the ceiling, like eating ice cream all day long. Like that's not productive. Like anxiety, some anxious people channel that anxiety for good into something productive, which I think is so powerful. And that's something that I learned to do as someone who was victim to that, laying in the bed staring at the ceiling. I've learned how to direct that negative energy into things that are productive when I am in those moments that are kind of low.
I can't imagine you laying in bed staring at the ceiling. No, you're either running a marathon or writing a book. So
I mean, it was like, it lasted probably like a week, and then I was like, okay,
there we go.
I learned how to run in those anxious moments because I didn't want to return to reality in my house. So I would just go out on the road and I'd like run for as long as I could because I didn't want to go home. And that's how I taught myself to run long.
Wow. That's,
so if you're ever anxious, just
I know.
on the road.
I know. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't run on the treadmill. Maybe I should just
run on a long road. It was in the Hamptons during the pandemic. It was a long road, like a never ending road. And I just kept running until I reached the end. And I turned around, and one day it was like 7 miles or something. I was like, all right, I can run a half marathon. And then the year later, I was like, all right, I can run a marathon. So, but it came out of anxiety.
That's a long
is
way
the
to
point.
But that's such a positive direction of your anxiety. So
yeah,
I really commend you on that.
Thank you.
Now, on a different note, I have another question. They say don't judge a book by its cover, but I love the cover. It's one of my favorite parts about the book. Well, just because it's like it's such a nice package, and look, you match it. But
thank you.
How did you come up with the idea for the cover? Like, how did that come together? Because it's kind of perfect.
Thank you. So the cover, I always say my book is like a Gen Z adaptation of Sex and the City. So this is actually the original skirt that Sarah Jessica Parker wore on the set of Sex and the City.
Wow.
It's a size 00. It was sitting under the bed in our house. I don't fit into a 00. I had bruises on my ribs that day. So it was like a crazy day, this photo shoot. I squeezed into the whole outfit. Anyway, as for the concept, I met Nigel Barker, the incredible photographer for this book, at a Fashion Week show. And he basically had this vision for the book when I first started talking to him about it.
Yeah.
So I came into it, I said, I know I want several different guys reaching in. I was going to have them like pulling my arms, but he had this vision. I told him that each chapter was dedicated to a different character, and his idea was to represent like a bunch of different characters on the side and have them like reaching in instead. So we have like a football player, a rocker, the nerd, the skateboarder, the surfer. So it kind of like gives people a sneak peek, I guess. And then as for my face, it's kind of like, which one do I choose? I had like several different options for my face too. I had like a model stare, but this ultimately like told the story of the book, I think, best.
Oh, it does. It does. I love it.
Thank you.
So this is an inspiring book, but it's also a fun read. Mm-hmm. What do you hope people take out of this? Besides we talked about the mental health aspect, the anxiety of it, but what do you hope people walk away feeling after reading this book?
So it was important to me that this book wasn't a dating guide. I didn't want to be telling people how they should date, who they should date. It's really up to you. Like how you build your own rom-com is up to you. Yeah. So what I wanted to do is share my experiences and what I've learned from them. And hopefully in doing so, give these people the tools to go about their own experiences in love and dating and feel like they can be more confident. Yeah. So along with that, and just to emphasize like how important it is to love yourself fully before you can extend your love outwards.
Oh, well, that's a powerful thing to say for sure. Although I was taking notes on the first kiss tip box.
What?
Yeah, that was great. I was definitely taking some notes.
What'd you learn?
I learned that don't make sure your breath isn't too minty. No, just kidding.
Not too minty, just a little minty, but a little minty.
I feel like I've been too minty before. I don't know. I was psychoanalyzing for sure.
Has someone said anything?
No, but have you ever kissed somebody with gum in your mouth?
All the time.
Oh, so that doesn't mean it's too minty?
No. But the gum loses its flavor really
fast. It
does
lose its flavor. I guess if you've just popped one in, then it might.
Yeah. I mean, I have this habit of like chewing gum for like 2 minutes and then spitting it out because it loses its flavor.
I'm the opposite. I will chew it for 2 hours.
Really? Oh, it drives me crazy because you'll just like chew it and chew it and chew it, and then I'll get like bored. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway,
the audience participation question: how long do you guys chew your gum?
Forever.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Forever.
We've really outnumbered you here.
I know. Oh well.
So is there anything else that you wanna say about the book you wanna leave people with?
No, I just think this is obviously a read directed towards teenagers, but also I think I had in mind as I was writing this that this is also something that moms can gift their teens. Like it could be a really great mother-daughter read. I think there are no books really out there that are able to open up these conversations about dating and relationships and like sex, which are like really mature topics between mothers and daughters. So I also had that in mind when I was writing this. Like this could be a book that a mom can gift their daughter to naturally spark that conversation, to help them learn, to make those conversations more natural and less uncomfortable, I guess. So it's really a great read for all ages. And, you know, even if you're just older and looking for a dose of nostalgia, curious what it's like to be dating as a Gen Zer in the age of social media.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm really excited and hopeful for the future of this book. I can't wait for people to read it.
I love it. And I feel like there are like, you know, there's podcasts that talk about similar things, like, but there's no books that are sparking that conversation between mothers and daughters. And I can totally see how you would have that in mind writing that. And I think it's absolutely perfect for that. But I also feel like people of all ages can really take something from this book because it's really well written.
Thank you.
Like you have I mean, I know you're a writer, but you have an insane vocabulary. I was like Googling.
Oh my God.
I was like Googling the.
Do I actually? Okay.
No, you have a great vocabulary.
I make fun of myself for this all the time, as does my mom, because I feel like I have such a shitty vocabulary.
No,
I don't. Okay, good. Anyway, I think also just, you know, nobody knows teenagers like another teenager.
Yeah.
So I think as someone who has grown up in not only just in the world of dating and social media, but also like I've been a writer since I was 8.
Yeah.
So I think that I have this voice and I have these stories to share as a teenager that I think could be really powerful for teens and powerful for moms to share with their teens.
Oh yeah, for sure. Also not like, you know, I feel like not that many people have experienced dating on tours and things like that. So I was reading this being like, oh my God, I feel so hurt.
You feel nostalgic as someone who was on social tours?
So nostalgic.
We're both like
a little too understood in that way.
I know. I mean, we understand each other in that way. We've both been on social media tours and have experienced what it's like to be in that environment, you know, surrounded by TikTok boys.
It's weird, guys.
How crazy,
it's so weird.
How crazy that is. And nobody talks about what that's like. And,
nobody
you know, it's interesting. It's interesting for people who follow their favorite influencers on social media just to wonder what goes on behind the scenes after those shows end. But you obviously probably had a unique experience reading it as someone who's on the tour as an influencer.
Oh, for sure. But, you know, even on a general level, even if I hadn't been on a social media tour, I feel like your book is super, you know, it has a great conversational aspect to it. And I feel like people are going to walk away being like, oh my gosh, she's my friend. Like, I know when I read books, I get super sucked into this whole world. It's like my fantasy world that I like enter at night. And I feel like people are going to they're really going to get that from this book, and they're really going to get like a new friend out of this book. So
thank you. That's the goal. I want it to be relatable, but also fun to read, vulnerable. It's kind of like a tour de force of emotions, like an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you want to do Q&A?
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
What advice would you give to moms who are afraid to have the talk with their kids?
Oh, that's a good question.
So, if nobody heard on the live stream, just in case, what advice would you give to moms who are afraid to have the talk with their kids. The talk being, you know, those mature topics, love, dating, relationships, sex. So I think what I would say to that is to listen first and foremost. Dating today isn't like how dating was back then. And just listen.
So weird today.
It's so weird. We're in the digital age. Like, it's super strange. We're also in like a post-pandemic world. We dated on like FaceTime for a year.
Right.
So I would just say, listen to your child, be open, don't be too interrogative. Listen and allow them to express how they're feeling. Don't form assumptions. Just because your child is asking you about love, dating, sex, relationships doesn't mean that they're doing so yet. It could just mean they're curious. And also just to focus on instilling proper values in your child. You know, you want to teach them about pregnancy risks, consent, the importance of trust in a relationship.
Yeah.
So those, I think, would be my main tips.
Great. Do we have any more questions from the audience?
Did you ever have a time where your parents didn't approve of a dating situation?
So the question was, did you ever have a time your parents didn't approve of a dating situation? And the answer is all the time. I grew up living with my parents, obviously. I still live with my parents. It happened all the time. There was a chapter in the book, I'm pretty sure you got to it. It's called The Big Shot, where I was newly 18 and I met a 27-year-old at like a bar, and it did not go well. He like dropped me off at home and I like went skipping into my house, and I was like so excited. And it was Mother's Day, ironically. And my mom freaked out and I ruined her Mother's Day because she thought like her kid was about to get kidnapped by like a pedophile or something. So that was not good. Stuff like that happens, but I'm very lucky. I have a very strong relationship with my mom, and I think we've grown together in that way.
Yeah.
But, you know, we've had our moments where I've yelled at her, she's yelled at me, but we got to a point, I think, probably because of that situation, where it just became an open conversation. So if I feel like I need to come to her with any questions, I can. And it's a comfortable environment, which I really value.
So important. I feel like that's such an important part of, you know, of maintaining good relationships with other people. I feel like it all starts with your relationship with your parents. So it's good to hear that you have that.
I mean, adulting is hard, and it's nice to have a good relationship to your mom and your dad and feel like you have these family members you can really talk to if you feel like something's up in your love, dating, relationship life.
Yeah. At the same time, I feel like it's also, you know, sometimes we have to make those mistakes for ourselves in order to, sometimes you just have to learn it yourself. What do you think is what do you think is the biggest mistake you've ever made with dating and relationships? Or the biggest, you know, red flag that you skipped over, or the riskiest thing that you did?
I think just falling in love too fast. I talk about that in a bunch of chapters, just getting like too excited too fast, not pacing myself, not taking my time. I mean, chapter 2, The First Love, I say that in the moment I felt like I was in love with him, but in reflecting back on it, years later, I ultimately realized that I wasn't. And I just liked, I guess, the idea of him. I didn't know him at all. He didn't see me when I was sad or upset or angry. It was just all surface level. And I think all the fun experiences we went through, it was on a social media tour, big shocker. I think all of those experiences we went through and all the travel kind of blinded me to that, and just made me feel like I was in love with someone when it was just a concept.
Yeah, I feel like you're also somebody who likes to, you are an optimist that likes to see good qualities in people, especially in your dating life. So how do you think if you've managed to overcome that in some way now, but how do you manage to try and pace yourself now when you take a different approach to dating, as to not try and make things go too quickly or just only be blindsided by the good?
I think I've learned, because I've done it enough. Like, there reached a point where I was like, all right, like, this isn't working. Going too fast isn't working. Enough is enough. So I think I just know now, like, to pace myself, to also be communicative with the other person, that I'm not looking to take things too fast, that I want to pace myself to make sure I really get to know someone first.
Yeah.
I mean, that was super important. And I think that's something that I learned with time as I matured.
Yeah, I really should be taking notes right now, guys. Like,
I mean, it's all in the book.
it's all in the book. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a giant notebook.
Bring your highlighter.
Read the book.
But yeah, any other questions from the audience?
I do have one. One of the reasons why I decided to come to get these two from these books as gifts too, because I got a bunch of tickets. All of us were going to be more people here, because I like how it says how to build confidence. My sister is going through depression where she doesn't feel proud of who she is, her purpose. She wants to give up in life. She's not where she wants to be. She doesn't know what she likes or what to do. Is there something in your book that can relate to that to help encourage someone that is in that mindset that could help them?
Yeah, skip to chapter 14. Yeah, the last chapter, that was me for 6 months. I was depressed. I didn't want to get up in the morning either. I didn't have like any purpose. I felt like I didn't know how to be happy again. And I think that last chapter, I'm very specific about how I was feeling. I'm not scared to talk about it. So my hope is that people like your sister will be able to read this and relate, because if I had a tool like this when I was going through it, I feel like it really would have helped me a lot, because all I wanted to hear was that I wasn't alone, and it felt like I was the only person in the universe that was going through it at that time. So I can only hope and pray that it will help her. Thank you.
I heard you talking about the Grove Barnes and Noble too.
Mm-hmm.
You guys going to do another event there? Is that passed already?
It's passed already, unfortunately.
Because you guys were planning it. I was going to say they could try to go to that one too.
Oh, well, if she reads the last chapter, if anyone reads the book and has feedback on it, feel free to leave a review on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, if you liked it, and hopefully I'll try to respond to some of them. I would really appreciate any feedback. This has really been a labor of love, and I just hope that it means as much to other people as it does to me.
That's amazing. Any other questions, guys?
We're good.
All right.
Thanks, Capri.
Thank you.
This interviewer.
I've never done this before, guys. I was so nervous. You have no idea.
You did great.
Thanks.
The interviewer in me, the journalist in me, is proud of you right now.
I was about to say, the non-experienced interviewer interviewing the journalist. That's why I was nervous.
Yeah, I interviewed Capri the other day for my college class randomly.
The roles have been reversed.
So the roles have been reversed. You did a great job.
Yay, you did a great job too.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And there are copies of the book available to buy at the front, and Mike can help check you all out.
Great.
Yay.
So I'm curious, what's your